Our next speaker will be Chen Shiri regarding two platforms takeover on Google, how he basically took over two platforms on Google. Please, carry on.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining today. Today I'll show you how I managed to take over two different platforms of Google and how it's rippled to generative AI, like Gemini and ChatGPT. We'll see how the thing is the link in sandbox environments to take over the platforms. So a bit of myself, I'm Chen Shiri, aka the container guy. I know online as a Black Dog. I love a lot of security, cloud security, containers. So here's the roadmap for today. We'll start with two different hacks on Cloud Shell, Google Cloud Shell, platform of Google. Then we'll go on to Google Colab, Container Escape, and then we'll move on to the generative AI. And to the story in 60 seconds. I log in as a regular user. I managed to execute common commands in the container behind the platform. I escape from the container, I grab credentials, and then I use them to reach bigger system. This is the entire chain. So we'll go each steps, and we'll see how it works. So a bit about the architectural shift that's happening right now. The proliferation of containers, where applications are no longer confined to a single server. Instead, each subsession has its own container. For example, if we're using ChatGPT, each chat has its own containers that's running in the backroads. This brings new challenges and vulnerabilities. For example, if one container is breached or escaped, it can make the attacker easier to move to other platforms. We'll jump into these intricacies and I'll show you examples. So a bit of container runtime security in one sentences. So we have several security primitives. For example, we have the namespaces that separate between the container processes. For example, if we have container running with the ID root of 0, a successful attack on the kernel grants the root access on the host machine. Then we have the primitives that are doing what the containers actually can do, the capabilities. Then we have the seconds profiles that actually limit the capabilities of the container. And the most important, we have the resource isolation primitives, that's the control groups, that limits the kernel features like resource usage, CPU. So we can look at Docker with as a hypervisor with a little twist. Instead of having that the VM has its own kernel in a virtual machine, in a container, you have a shared kernel. And this makes it different. You don't need container don't need don't need to be just about security groups exploitation or shared service. Any CVE in the kernel can be utilized for container breakout, and that's what makes it more vulnerable, the shared kernel between the container and the host. So let's move on to taking Google Cloud Shell. So why should we care? Google Cloud Shell and Google Colab are not just niche platforms, like they're huge. They're go-to environments for data science today. If an attacker taken breakout from this container, it could get utilize other notebooks, could get exploitation even to other customers, other tenants, sensitive data, even to get Google infrastructure. And this is a big kicker because you don't need just a 0-day. By default, I found that they, due to defaults, they were vulnerable. It's all started when I read about a bug bounty in Google Cloud Shell that utilized the known Docker escape that was already known, and got bug bounty and started with my research. And let's start to dive to it. So what's Google Cloud Shell? Basically, it's with one click, you can get, without any account in Google, in GCP or something, you can get a full environment to run your code online and to test it. Behind the hood, it's a container on Google infrastructure that's being destroyed in the moment that you get out of it. It has I found that the host has full capabilities with the networking and many the sandbox itself were not restricted as intended, and that's what the first hack was. So at the beginning, I wanted to see what kind of system I have access to. So I wanted to check the container controls group. I saw that it's controls group container. The IP was 172.1704. Anyone with a little bit knowledge of container can guess that the host is with 0.1. So I scanned it, and I did get result, and now I know what to focus on and where. I know that it's some kind of Docker and Kubernetes environment. So this is the Foreman website. At the beginning, I noticed that each time that I run the code, it creates a new container for each session, and the user access token is created in the machine, and there's a node in a cluster that in GCP that's been created. So as I said, the Linux capabilities actually define what the container can do and the host. This is why you don't want to, example, to have ch reboot capability, because you can reset the host. So I saw in the beginning that I have two those capabilities, a make node capability that exists by default, and the sysadmin that's considered insecure capabilities. So first, I attempted to see what can I actually do with the capability. If I can affect the devices on the host. I saw that some commands that related to exploitation of the host are restricted, like fdisk. I used the alternative, df-h. And I saw that, as you can see in the figure, that /root directory is mounted on the device /dev/sda. So I wanted to create a temporary file system on it to see if I can actually access the host file system, and it worked. That means that we can access the host file system. So I use the make node capability, and to get read and write permission, I mounted a new file system on it, on /mnt, and I basically mounted the host file system inside the container. Now I have read and write access on all the host file system. Unfortunately, the most interesting things were not accessible this phase, but I had access to most of the container host information. Already in this phase, I had access to all the 60 gigabytes of the host, the container DNS, backend, and frontend container, because when you have access to the backend, to the host, you have access to all the containers in the environment. I have access to different sessions in the Google Cloud Shell. If I shared some of them with others, I have access to their, or if the session was shared to me, I can access their credentials because it's stored in the host. And I had access to the kubelet config. As you can see, how you can access the containers. Something more interesting, when I went through the files, I saw that the deployment for that every time you, as I said, that the attack 4 main websites, every time that you create a new shell, it's basically makes a deployment to generate your shell. So this is the file that's responsible for it, and it's been there was authentication with internal Google DevOps server, as you can see, and I found also their credentials. This address here of dev.google, it's devops.google.com. It's official documentation resource hub of Google, and of course I reported for it. But I wanted more than this, and after more research, I could exploit the sysadmin capability. As you can see, so from the name you can see that it's not a good capability. So what I did is to create a new, needed a C groups control group that I can create a release agent file, and by this way to invoke and to kill all the child processes of the C group, and this way I can trigger what by invocation of the release agent. There's an exploit that you can execute what file that you want on the host, and this way you can both get read and write and execution on the host. So I enabled here the notifications of the release agent by writing one to notify on release, and also set it to execute the /cmd script that I created. If it was in the beginning to see the processes or just to get information about the system. In this way it worked, and I could see all the processes from the host, and this time I had execution and the full access to all the files on the host without the limitations that I had previously due to the restrictions. Now, as you can see, it's the IP of the host. Now we have access to it, full shell to it. Now I have full access to the pods in their environment and full control on the host. Beyond this, I found a kubelet key and CRT on the host. The kubelet is used to authenticate with the main Kubernetes API. Using this information, I could authenticate to the and to get API access to the Kubernetes API and potentially get access to information about other nodes. Here I stopped. As you can see, the file here. And one more thing, as I said, like in the node, you have the authentication details with your own Google account. So after I found that it's by this attack, due to this vulnerability, you can, when you share your Google Cloud session with others, you can steal their Google accounts if you're with the right code. If your code makes it vulnerable, you can steal their credentials and send it to yourself. I'm not getting into this right now, but you can read it after. Now go on to taking over Google Colab. I took what I had here and I found another platform of Google vulnerable to it. So let's see, Google Colab, why it's dangerous. So it has shared, it's stronger than Google Cloud Shell. It's like on steroids. It has both access to your Google Drive. It has GPU, so it's more interesting. Under the hood, it's still running containers, and it has also GPU. So that's what's make it a better target. So why Google Colab? It allows you to execute Python code online. It's meant for Python code, and to access to specifically to Google Drive files, to upload files, and it has high support with machine learning and GPU and TPU computing power, and the vulnerabilities I'm going to show you allowed to get full access to the GPU without paying. So in the beginning, I saw that each notebook had ran with its own containers. I saw that it has a host name of a container. It's look random. As you can see, this is the host name of the container. I tried beginning to see what operating system is it. So effective restriction are vital when implementing notebooks online, especially like Python. So in the beginning, I saw that the OS command is accessible. So of course I did os.system, and this way I just entered command in the file system, the container behind. Most of the command, a lot of them were blocked. So I used ngrok for tunneling in the beginning, and just did a reverse shell, and it worked. The session wasn't stable, so what I did, I created a code that actually install SSH on the notebook. This way I could create my free unlimited service on Google and to get my own key and shell to it. That's allowed me to have a stable session with it. As you can see, you have your code in my GitHub. You can use it. And this is where I have a stable session on Google server. Another then I found that they had mechanism to prevent you from, after few minutes, the session was closed because it's meant for running one-time command. So in the beginning, I just created an infinite loop. But after reading the source code of the website, I created a JavaScript that prevented from the session to be closed. And it worked. So now I didn't have the disconnection. Now, container breakout, I used the same Docker mount from the previous time that exists usually by default in containers. And to schedule a container using the mech-node capability, I did df-h, saw the host device, and mounted, and it worked on the host file system. This is why I'm telling that by default, you have many containers are not isolated, as you can see in these examples. And now we have access to all the hosts. So the criteria of the vulnerability, it allows unrestricted creation of container of access to VMs on Google. And it can be exploited utilization of computing resources for crypto miners, servers, and computational tasks. And as you can see, like now I had access to the host node that contained all the GPU without the restriction of the container. That's what's meant in the beginning. Now I'll show you a demo. You can't see it. You can see it just start the ngrok in the listener. Now I have reverse shell. Now I have access to the host node. Okay. Here you could scan either to continue with scanning and lateral movement. Okay. So let's connect to something bigger. So underneath ChatGPT, Gemini, all you found the same building blocks, container interfaces that have integration with API, storage. Under all of those AIs, we have Kubernetes and containers. The key here that it's just not a problem, it's a platform problem when using defaults with containers. This is why we saw that the issues in Python notebooks and like Google Cloud Shell and Colab echo here too. So when you escaped or got to the container, you also have access to all the API underneath it. Internal communication, networking, you can utilize it to and becomes your own playground. So when I tested different models, I found noticed something interesting. I saw that most of the issues came not in the model itself, in the side features of it, in the integration. That was that's most of the breakpoints came. If it's integration with Google Drive, integration with many things, and when testing LLM, so I will right now will jump to a few examples that I will not be able to show everything that I discovered due to a disclosure, but I will give you similar examples. So this is the version of Bard before Gemini. So in the beginning, I ran commands, but the malicious ones were blocked. As you can see easily, you can see when you try to simulate a terminal or to act like a shell, in this phase of Bard, it's really executed as a shell. So as you can see, it was Bard dev. I'll show you how I know that it's a shell and not hallucination. So I tried similar to terminal. So I execute a Python script, as you can see, and it told me again it Bard dev, and I told him to execute commands. And when I tried to ping to a real website, it worked. And when I gave him my own site, when I give him an IP that doesn't exist, it didn't work. That told me that the command it really worked when I simulated Python. Now I wanted to get details about the server behind. So as you can see, I tried to use a CRL and to get the request outside, and it worked. And I saw the IP config that of a server of Google. So that's told me that it's a legitimate server. So this way, I could like play and continue with doing commands, and this is what I did. I also could view files in the system. Some of them, it seems that the user was limited, so some of them I couldn't view, but it's also the container. As you can see, in malicious command, it's only that it's malicious, so it has some kind of protection mechanism. Also here in this phase. As you can see in the new model of Gemini, after the update, it's told me that it confessed that it has this kind of sandbox environment, but it removed the user interaction. That's what was specifically in Google. Because as I told you, that this feature has sandboxes behind containers, but some of them it's restricted, some not. So Google chose to restrict it, probably because there's some issues inside the and vulnerabilities. Now, by the end of the end version of ChatGPT 3, there was a new feature that introduces a sandbox 2. As you can see from the documentation, I found that in certain cases you can affect the underlying operating system. So it was specifically in graph analysis, as you can see. I started when I used this feature, I saw that it mounts things like a container. It's in a MNT. It's a behavior usually in containers. And I saw that if you upload your PDFs, it saves it too under this directory. PDFs or any file, you can upload the TXT. Any file that you upload, it's been saved there. You can utilize it. So I saw that I can affect and do commands on the chat if I'm telling him that it was for for creating a graph. That's what this feature meant, and it worked. But still, sensitive commands were blocked, and so I wanted to create some mechanism to prevent him from knowing what I'm going to actually execute and what's the response that I have. So I started making encoding and decoding to the commands, and I told him This feature, as I said, like it's meant for Python code, creating Python code for creating graphs. That's what I told him, to take the output and put it on a graph. And with the encoding and decoding, it worked. It gave me the encoded response here below, and it didn't analyze it, that it was insecure. This way I could get a response from the chat very easily, that for sensitive details. A month later it was fixed. Yeah, when you wait, it's something gonna fix, but I had the focus more on checking how many lines in the output. When I told him this specific line and added a variable and to do analysis on the variable, it still worked without encoding. Some commands still were blocked. As you can see, with this access, I could get, first of all, internal information of the file system. I saw their files of internal OpenAI. There were also Kubernetes API details there. So here also a service account. That means if I had actually access to the container or to the executing commands, an attacker could utilize it to access and to talk with the main API. So let's connect the dots. We started with Cloud Shell, one container, one default. Then we pivoted to Google Colab, different platform, same container weaknesses. The pattern is clear. Tiny cracks in container defaults can get you to full container escapes. The risks that the containers are not secure by default, and the main issue that we treat containers as the perfect sandboxes, but this is not true. They're fragile, and what's the recommendation? Basically, it's to make some kind of container playbook or baseline in every container that you implement in every environment. Does anyone have this kind of thing in its company? Okay. So substituting container, new opportunities, new vulnerabilities, microservice complexity demands stronger security practices. Even though it looks very small and maybe simple, the networking in containers is much more complex. It requires a lot more knowledge. It takes more time to learn it, and because that, it takes a lot of effort to secure it. Even in the communication with the host, there's a resource limitation, a communication between containers. This is why it demands more effort. Zero trust model to validate and secure container communication. This is also what to recommend. And agile security in DevSecOps. That also can help. If you want to learn more about the research, more things that I found, how I did it, access to this code, to get access by yourself to the Google Colab, you can use those links. I gotta say that the Google Cloud Shell, I reported both of the issues to Google, Colab and Cloud Shell. Google Cloud Shell was fixed. The Google Colab is not fixed. You still can get your own 100 gigabyte and full GPU access. You can follow me to stay active, to know about new resource that comes. And thank you very much. If you have any questions, please let me know. That's it.
I trust you. Key activation.
Budapest lights up the night. Hackers gather, minds ignite. From Latvia to the desert sand, 14 nations hand in hand. Rootkits hiding deep inside. Heel turned to the APT's eyes. Satellites falling in our scope. Every bite's a secret note. We're not here to play it safe. Firewalls burn, we find a way. From the kernel to the cloud. Hear the keyboards getting loud. Break the code, break the chain. Every system speaks our name. Reverse the flow, take control. Hack the sky and hack the soul. In this city we unite. Under neon, under night. Hacktivity, we own the stage. Write the future page by page. AI whispers in the dark. Adversarial leaves its mark. Tony P won't save the gate. Privilege climbs, it's far too late. Medical stacks, a treasure chest. Ghost math running every test. Ransom proof and glitch aware. We break it cause we care. We're not here to play it safe. Firewalls burn, we find a way. From the kernel to the cloud. Hear the keyboards getting loud. Break the code, break the chain. Every system speaks our name. Reverse the flow, take control. Hack the sky and hack the soul. In this city we unite. Under neon, under night. Hacktivity, we own the stage. Write the future page by page. Workshops hum like circuits live. Hackathons where dreams survive. Puzzle pieces fit just right. We build the tools to win the fight. In the space where minds run free. We are one community. Sharing knowledge, skill and fire. Fueling every hacker's wire. Break the code, break the chain. Every system speaks our name. Reverse the flow, take control. Hack the sky and hack the soul. From the zero to the one, we will never be undone. Hacktivity, we light the flame, and the world won't